right here.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jason Tucker, and this is WP Watercooler, episode number 340. Today's topic is WordCamp Long Beach recap.
Is it 340?
340.
On the nose? All right. I thought you were like there was another number after that.
No. 340 question mark.
It's pretty amazing. Let's be real about that for a second.
This particular episode of WP Watercooler is brought to you by ServerPress, makers of desktop server, and WP SiteSync. Make sure you go over to their website over at serverpress.com, where you can learn how you can build 3 free websites on your local development, and then be able to do some syncing and updating using WP SiteSync.
You can sync your site. Or you can piss off Mark
Benzer-Kane.
Thank you. I did.
Exactly. So, folks, thank you very much for being on the show. Let's talk a little bit about WordCamp Long Beach.
Do we do intros first?
Yeah, let's do some intros. Okay. How about you?
It's like it's 240 episodes, and we're suddenly changing our format.
Did you say Steve? How about you?
Yeah, Steve, how about you?
I'm first. I'm never first.
I know, man. Z's and everything. So I thought I'd just hook you up.
I am Steve Zengin. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC WordPress meetup. And I was a speaker at WordCamp Long Beach this past weekend.
What? Yes, he was.
We're going to go in reverse last name order. So how about that? Jonathan Wold, how about you?
All right, Jonathan Wold. I was also a speaker at WordCamp Long Beach this last week. And, I love talking about WordPress any chance I can get.
Awesome. Good to have you on. How about you, Say?
My name is Say Reed, and I make WordPress, teach WordPress, preach WordPress at Say Reed Media on all things. I was one of the co-organizers of the WordCamp Long Beach WordCamp this weekend, and the instigator, it's a good word, behind the Future of WordPress track. And also, fun fact, y'all know Morton.
Yeah.
I can't remember right now.
We know there's really only one Morton.
Just Morton. Anyway, he tweeted his first question video. This is just a fun fact. First question video that he ever asked at the State of the Word this week, which was in 2013. And he asked his question. And then I'm asking my first question at the end of that same video. And I just thought that was funny. And I wanted to note that in that I said, I'm from Say Reed Media and WP Watercooler. That was in 2013. I was giving shouts out even then. What? Wow. All right, anyway, that was a really long intro, but
thank you.
So for you 3 people that are watching, Say's the reason why you showed up.
what?
Natalie, how about you? Tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Natalie McLeese. I'm founder of Digitally and Accessibility Consultancy, and I was one of the speakers at WordCamp Long Beach.
I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me over at Jason Tucker on Twitter. My website is jasontucker.blog, and I do this show as well as another show called WP Watercoolers, WP Blab. So feel free to go take a look at that. And we do some really fun stuff over there. We had Dave Margowski on not too long ago, where we talked about products and all sorts of fun stuff like that, marketing your own products and all of those sorts of things. So if you want to hear how Pixel Jar is doing their marketing with their products, you can go take a look at that episode.
Did you learn anything?
No, I didn't learn a thing.
Water cooler.
I learned nothing.
300.
Dave Margowski, man. If it had Steve on, be the same thing. Come on, you know.
You're like, I'm gonna have on people I don't know.
Steve's like, all right, let me note that down real quick.
That's fair.
Anyway, so hey,
Long Beach.
by all accounts, what?
It was a thing. WordCamp Long Beach.
It was a thing.
It was a good thing. People really liked it, and I am so pleased. So overall, I wanted to talk for sure about the Future of WordPress track specifically today, but as an overall for first camp, it was great. And yes, we did get multiple compliments on how lunch was organized. You're welcome.
It was a really good camp.
It was a really good camp. But we really got multiple compliments on the organization, which is actually one of the most my favorite compliments. Like speaker tracks, yeah, whatever. But like you're like, oh, they're well organized, and I'm like, great today. So in case you want to know how to compliment, say that's how you she did a good job organizing something.
It was my first local WordCamp that I've attended. And
first time speaking.
Local, but not local to you.
And first time speaking, and at a WordCamp. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really well organized.
But the magic, what was really exciting was how many people said they were going to say. A bunch of people actually came just for Sunday. Like they didn't actually come on Saturday at all. They only came on Sunday, which is like pretty rare in the WordCamp world, because most people come on Saturday and then don't attend on Sunday because it's like, kind of the add-on day or the contributor day or whatever. But in this case, a lot of folks showed up for it, and I was really happy about that. It was a lot of, mostly professionals that showed up, I think, on Sunday, and people who are like in the WordPress community, who are like WordPressers. And I think that the lineup that we had was pretty stellar, if I don't say so myself. And you three were really a huge part of that.
Well, two of us, and then me.
You were definitely bait, and then it was more like a bait and switch kind of deal. But Jonathan opened talking about. Actually, I really think it's interesting because Jonathan's talk and Steve's talk kind of took a really different view of WordPress as a concept. Jonathan, you were talking about WordPress as an operating system. And then Steve, you were really specifically talking about WordPress as a tool, which, accurate for you. You're welcome. I kid because I love, this, obviously, after 340 episodes. Anyway, I wanted to talk about that a little bit before we hop into Natalie's talk, which I could talk about for 5 years. So I wanted to make sure we got Jonathan and Steve first.
One of the things that I think I really enjoyed as a speaker was the chance to, I felt that having a track on a particular theme and then being able to sit and listen to the other talks. I'm like, oh wow, there's seeing the connection points between different talks and what any individual emphasized. So I think that's one of the things that I think I really liked about this idea of a theme in general. And I particularly enjoyed having the chance to sort of set some, here's some ideas. And then Gabe at the end, he also made reference to that idea of an operating system and not, which wasn't coordinated. So it was cool to see.
Yeah, but it was well bookended. And then Steve was literally right in the middle disputing both of those theories.
And some of the questions in the audience were interesting because they kept talking about as if you were the one that came up with that, Jonathan, that they're like, oh, he came up with the operating system for the open web. And I was like,
just take it.
All right.
I like to think of myself as I certainly didn't come up with it, and I also didn't believe it at first.
You said that in your talk, for the record. You specified that specifically. So.
But I do consider myself an advocate for it. I think I'm more intrigued that I think there's some really important concepts that can come out of a discussion about WordPress as an operating system, and that's what I'm interested in. More than the specifics of whether it's the best. One of the questions that I most appreciated was the gentleman pointing out, does this really an operating system is this? He came from a very technical background. I'm like, I agree with you. The whole point of this, and that's sort of the position I initially took, was, is this useful as a way of thinking? And does this is this useful as a way for us in WordPress to think? And I think it is. And could this be a useful way for us to explain WordPress to people who are increasingly non-technical, as the base of those who use WordPress expands?
I mean, I think that yes to all those things, but I think one of the most important reasons that this is, or most significant reasons that looking at what it means for WordPress to be an operating system for the open web is specifically because that is one of the stated goals, the very few stated goals that Matt Mullenweg, co-founder of WordPress Project and Benevolent Dictator for Life, has stated as the goals. That's one of the stated goals, and that's how he one of the lenses through which he views it, right? And so if we don't all have an understanding of what that means, or if that's just language that we just kind of toss out there, some tagline, but no one actually understands what we're talking about or is on the same page about what that means, then basically we're all just, we're not paying attention to one of these few stated kind of visions. And so I think it behooves all of us to really look at what that means and come to some sort of consensus, at least in the community, because we need to understand where it is we're being led. What does that mean? And are we good with that? And how does that impact us as people who work with WordPress and in WordPress?
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to mirror something that Jonathan said is I sat and watched all the speakers for the entire day as well. And I was a little nervous because,
amazing, by the way, just
the fact that I stayed.
The fact that you stayed, the fact that you listened, all of the above.
Yeah, no, thank you. And so, I was a little nervous because I was talking about WordPress as just another tool in your toolbox and using it for the right purpose, right? And other tools that might be better suited for different things, right? I was a little nervous giving that talk because this is a WordCamp, but I was kind of pleasantly surprised to see that I wasn't the only one with that opinion, right? I wasn't the only one who said that during my talk. Some other people talked about how to use the right tool for the job. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, although although you were plenty controversial, which I always appreciate, I do wish that you had talked a little bit more about WordPress, the future of WordPress, in that the future of the tool of WordPress itself, right? Because your talk was very now oriented and business oriented, as you are wont to do. But I think that how that tool is and is going to evolve, like what technologies are it. Whoa, what is happening?
Whoa. Hey.
Say always freaks out whenever I do anything on the screen.
It's weird. It's like suddenly stuff's moving. I think that, whether it's an operating system or it's a tool, where's that going? Because right now we're really talking about a lot of changing technologies for that tool. And so some of the tools and technologies that you talked about are being either integrated or discussed as being integrated into the tool. And so what does that mean? Like, is that better? Does it make it like a bat belt, like Batman's belt?
I understood.
Yeah.
Is it called the bat belt? I don't know. I don't think they call it the bat belt, but we'll go. I understood the reference.
What did they call it?
I don't know.
Everything in Batman had a name on it, and it was always the Bat something. So it had to have been the Bat Belt.
I've just never heard of it referred to as the Bat Belt. So, but yeah, we'll go with that. I digress.
So it's been announced today that I'll be giving a similar talk at WordCamp US. And the thing that so I've been thinking, so this being the first, and I've been thinking, okay, where can I? And some of the feedback that I've already received. So one, just in general, I want to try and go deeper in some of these topics, but really through the lens of why it matters. I feel like that's the thing. And some of the feedback I received, a lot of positive at this, like, okay, all right, so what? Like, if this is true, what does this concept actually matter? So I'm excited about digging into that further. And do
you have longer for your talk, or is your talk at WordCamp US 45 minutes slot?
I think it's also a 45-minute slot, but
well, you only had a 40-minute slot on Sunday. We tried to cram everybody into. We had 6 speakers in a month.
In my case, I think I took about 17 minutes for the talk.
Yeah.
Then the rest of it was Q&A. So I'm gonna. Yeah. Anyway, I'm excited to have the chance to sort of dig into it further and sort of take the feedback I've received and give it another shot. So we'll see how that goes.
I liked Andrea Middleton's talk.
Great talk.
I was so happy to have her there speaking about the community. It really, I think, was significant to have her presence there and to talk about this. And what's really interesting is that I'll tell you in case you forget. So a lot of the stuff that you can actually see it on the screen now. She talked about WordPress's kind of values as a community, things like that, and some of these sort of statements that are like guiding lights for the community. And I asked her afterwards, and I was like, "So where is that stuff? Like, where are we taking that from?" And she goes, "Oh, this is it. Like, I wrote this stuff down for this talk. That to me was like really telling, because I feel like we've been driving this WordPress train without a map for a while, and it's maybe a hype. We have like a philosophical map maybe, or like a guiding star somewhere, but in terms of like how we're getting there and what it means to people, like I think this is part of what people have been frustrated with, that it isn't more specific about what it is, what is guiding our decisions within the community. What are the values that are guiding the decisions of the people who are the core organizers or the core volunteers? And I was both shocked and super excited about the fact that she had written them down specifically for this. Shocked that it hadn't happened before, because she's been working there since 2011, and that's 8 years later, and the community's been around a while. And also pleasantly happy, because that was exactly what I wanted to happen for this, was to get some of these ideas in a more solid form so that we have something to discuss from a concrete point, which is kind of what, talking about WordPress as an operating system is also about. We have this vague concept of what this is, and let's get some real solid concepts down here so that we can actually start talking about something real instead of just talking up here in hypothetical a lot, which is what I feel that we do. We just
this is really where we live on the water coolers, right? In this space.
We kind of live on the side.
Yeah,
but the community as a whole really lives up here. There's like the core, which is just strict technical land, right? They make technical decisions. They make specific, concrete, code-based decisions. And then there's the community that I feel has a lot of discussion up here, which is all hypothetical.
right around in here.
For you audio folks, Say's pointing at the screen as if there was a thing there, and it's not there. And I want to make sure that this podcast is accessible.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
And going into accessibility.
Good point. Good point.
Natalie did a great job. Natalie, I really loved your talk.
Jason,
a lot.
moving on. Good segue.
I really loved your talk a lot, and
that was super amazing. And like
I learned a ton, actually.
Yeah,
me too.
Oh, well, that's pretty amazing, actually.
I think you made some incredible points of the slides that you can see here, permanent, temporary, and situational disabilities. I think that you brought home a point that so many people in the tech community in general, in the general populace, specifically also in the WordPress community, do not recognize, which is that, if you wear glasses, you have a sort of, you have a disability,
Yeah, a vision impairment.
Yeah, and these concepts of like, oh, I'm not disabled, but, you even demonstrated it. You're like, look, I can walk across the room, but I'm not the same as an elite athlete who has all these, crazy technical abilities physically, so just really bringing that point home that we all have this really, I think, dissipated the concept of the them versus us, or the doing accessibility for other people, as opposed to that this is something that impacts everybody. And I think that was one of the most important things that I've heard said at a WordCamp because of its impact. I could hear people being like, oh, right.
So, yeah. It's interesting. Connecting, one of the things that struck me after Natalie's talk was connecting back to Andrea's sort of explanation of, or highlighting of the values. And I think, I'm still thinking through this, but I think there's a tension between this value of the many over the few and like the concept of accessibility. Like there's a tension there. Like, how do you do, because I there is that value in general in WordPress that's fairly consistently demonstrated that we make decisions that benefit the many versus the few.
I would say that there's a lot of lip service paid to that versus actual stuff, but okay.
Agreed.
Well, but like just in general, like the things that go into core are the things that will benefit the many versus like, and that's typically from the positive perspective. We're not going to do things that only benefit a few particular organizations, et cetera. So it's typically touted as a positive. But
yeah, go ahead with your point.
But then there's a tension there where it's like, that's one of like the dangers of unchecked democracy is the threat to the minorities, right? and the protection of their rights. And it's interesting, like there's a tension there when it comes to things like accessibility, because you can argue, if you hold this, like the many versus the few, of like, oh, well, most people aren't affected by this. But then who defends the rights and fights for the rights of those few?
But see, that's the point that Natalie was making specifically. I'm speaking for you, obviously, Natalie here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like basically that we are all, it isn't about the few in this case.
Yeah.
Well, but yet, but accessibility, I mean, so you make the point that it applies to all, yes. But then there's still the very specific applications of how you, like, okay, what do you do to make things? I think I see your point. Like there are principles of accessibility that broadly apply to the many, but for me, it brought up that point in general of how do we relate to, like, is what got us here going to keep us going? When, like, at first it was do what's best for the many, and as WordPress grows and grows, there'll be larger populaces of the few that have unique needs, whether it's language, like if WordPress isn't available to them in their language, and do we care about that? Or specific accessibility subclasses where they have very specific needs, and do we care? Like, how do we handle that?
And the other thing that I took from Natalie's talk, and I'll let Natalie, I think Natalie wants to jump in here because we're all talking about her talk, right? but the whole point about Gutenberg, right? And just getting this feature out and forgetting about accessibility, right? Was I think it was an important take, right? So it was sort of the whole Gutenberg thing was sort of favoring a deadline rather than doing the right thing.
Yeah, that was definitely really frustrating to me, and I know to other people on the accessibility team at the time. And then one thing that Andrea brought up in her talk that I thought was really interesting is that it's really easy to get frustrated that there's constantly conflict and disagreement and skepticism among all the people on the team. But I think that rather than trying to be focused on how can we resolve that and all work together, but to think about how we can handle that in a healthy way, because it's never going to go away, to accept that as a part of the community, and then to figure out how we can actually use that to our benefit instead of resisting it and fighting against it, and making sure that that we don't just dismiss people as trying to cause drama or start a fight, because nobody's here to do that, right? I'm not here because I want to fight with people. I'm here because I care and I want to make a WordPress a better product, and I actively do not want to fight with anyone ever. So I think if we could be more focused sometimes, I think, on the motivations behind people's actions, I think it would help us get along better as a community and help more voices be heard and help us to support more people who are using WordPress in all kinds of different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked the tie-in that you made also, Natalie, between the, there's kind of those two taglines. Obviously, the operating system for an open web is kind of a newer concept for WordPress, but the enduring one is democratized publishing, right? That's kind of the enduring ethos or tagline or whatever for WordPress and the WordPress project. And in linking that, democratizing publishing, to making it accessible, that to me was just like, we're violating our own single ethos that we have here, people. Like, what are we doing? And so it's not even the responsibility to these external guidelines or whatever. It's literally to our own ethos that we have, or Matt has, or that we've all signed on for, or that we all ostensibly support, right? Because that's a lot of what draws people to WordPress, is that it's not just a tool, that it has an ethos, it has this community behind it. And, I think, open source, that concept that it is open source, or that it is about democratizing publishing and can reach these people and can be used, that's a big part of it. And in ignoring things like accessibility, we are literally ignoring that. And I think just kind of like making that connection that, oh yes, we all have these disabilities, whatever variation they are in, whether it's, you have a headache one day and you can't look at your screen, but that we are also, by ignoring that, we are ignoring our own ethos. And if we do that, then what foundation are we working on? Like, what is Like if we can't even, with this broad, vague concept of democratizing publishing, if we're violating that with our own updates for a deadline or for something that is also not stated clearly, then where's the thing that we can all get behind? Where's the common ground that we can all even start from?
Yeah.
And
when I think about, so I'm like, okay, well, what do we do with all these things, right? Because there's always something to point to. For me personally, the way that I wrestle with it or sort of come to terms with it is asking, are we, what direction are we making, what direction are we building momentum in, right? Because one of the points that I made about the open web is the best way that I've sort of come to grasp it is
grip?
as an ideal state, not a thing that we can even achieve in perfectness, if you will. So I wouldn't go so far as to say that applies to accessibility, but that one of the things we look at is, are we making momentum in the right direction? Right?
You know, if accessibility and the open web and technology is ever evolving, then I would actually agree that we can never achieve a perfect state of being totally accessible and whatnot, because we're constantly discovering new ways to be more accessible. I
But
feel
if
that
we
way.
value it, then our actions should be, we should see consistent momentum.
We should be going in that direction.
Yes, and acknowledging that
I think we can start with it by this slide right here is probably the one that hit me the hardest.
Yeah,
Because,
like what? Oh, what a concept!
I mean, this was like Natalie's, like, you know, this was her zinger at the very end of it, was just like, you know, just drive this home.
Oh,
You guys,
by the way, this isn't a requirement. And oh, by the way, what was the percentage point you said? It's like 1% or something ridiculous?
Yeah, 1% of themes in the repo currently have the accessibility ready tag, and there's no equivalent tag for plugins.
I'll just throw something out here.
So painful.
I've been thinking about an opportunity for hosts here. One of the things that I'd like to see happening, and there's pieces in place with projects like Tide, is to see hosts start offering opinions to their customers, like being able to say, "Hey, we're going to start recommending plugins and themes to you."
I mean, GoDaddy does that.
Yeah, there's already some clear signs, but for instance, a host is in a great position to say, "We value accessibility. We're going to highlight plugins and themes that are meeting these standards, whether or not they're enforced yet." I think there's a lot of opportunity.
If we're talking about the WordPress project as a whole, hosts, whatever, we should be doing that in the repo. Like,
practically speaking, hosts have the opportunity to move faster than the project. And in my experience working with them, I'm just calling that out consciously. If you value things like this, you don't need to wait. You can say, "Hey, we're going to serve our customers better," and then then others see it and like, "Oh, we should be doing that too." Do you really want to be known as the least accessible host?
I mean, the thing is that this week, was it this week? I think it was this week. My weeks are a little fuzzy. The Domino's, that was this week, right? Okay, good.
Yeah, that was this week.
Ruling, or the Supreme Court rejected the Domino's ruling, which means that the ruling stands from the federal court that they can sue for the violation of accessibility standards, which means that businesses, which is a huge, huge chunk of WordPress in general, is websites in general, business websites in general, can be sued or have issues with, or basically sued, for accessibility violations.
But websites count as places of public accommodation under the ADA.
What you said. This is why we have Natalie on today. But that fact right there. So it is really important for hosts to provide that, or for agencies to provide that, because if we do not provide that counseling and that information to our clients, we are literally, it'd be the same as if you're like, yeah, you can put on a bunch of mail list things and not even talk about the GDPR, or the California Consumer Privacy Act that's going to take effect in, January 1st. Like, at what point are we not doing our due diligence either to support our clients in that? Like, this is a new frontier of, like, we have that obligation. I think hosts, I think they should do that, but I think, the developers have an obligation as the people with that information to pass that along to their customers. And that has to happen like literally now, especially in California.
Yeah, for sure. You know, you don't want to be the developer who has a client call you up and say, hey, you know this website you built for us? We're getting sued.
Well, that already happens with images, right? Like developers, if developers put up images, I have a client I know someone who was sued, not my client, who was sued for having an image on their site was a copyrighted image that they didn't even put up. Didn't even have anything to do with them. The developer put it up, and then they got sued for copyright infringement. And where's that buck stopping, or who's actually responsible for that?
Look at the time.
Oh my gosh.
At the very end of every episode, we always find what the next episode's going to be about. And Natalie, if you want to come back next week and we can discuss this further, I think that'd be a great idea. And if you can't make it, that's fine. We'll
come again.
We'll see what we can do by ourselves.
No, but we'll also come again another time, because your input is so valuable, and you're certified, right? IPCQR.
Yeah, IAAP. Yeah.
And we love Natalie.
We do love Natalie.
Thanks. I love you guys too.
She's also like she's got the paper. So like
totally.
He's like got the.
Well, yeah, it's
she's
frame
legit
over there.
Yeah,
it's over there. Can you see it?
Like maybe
that's it.
But it's also legit.
All right, Jason's trying to end this thing.
Yep, I'm trying to end this thing. So thank you very much for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. Go over to our website over at WPwatercooler.com/subscribe, and you can subscribe to this content and all the other content that we do over on the network over there. So thank you very much. You guys have a good one. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.